Hey everybody, this is Beth Freely, author, editor, and owner of the Muses Funhouse, and I want to talk to you today about preparing your manuscript for developmental editing and how you can approach this process with confidence. Now, developmental editing, if I can say the word right, developmental editing is the deep dive into your manuscript. Here's where we're going to look at the core of your story. Now, this is the fun part for an editor because we really get to dive into what is going on with your book, what is going on with your manuscript, how your manuscript's laid out, how it reads, among other things, how it works and really gets to the core of the story. As an editor, we look at the plot, your character development, your setting, the pace of your story, and your narrative structure. And developmental editing is also designed to look at how coherent your story is. Is your story engaging from start to finish? Um, are your characters' journeys believable and compelling? Is your pacing right? Or are you going too fast? Or are you going too slow? The only time we want a slow burn is when you're writing a romance novel. And then do your settings add to your narrative's depths? Now, as we look at the structure and the content of your books, remember this is always going to be your first major edit of your manuscript once you have finished that first draft. It's usually done before line and copy editing because as an editor, we don't really worry about some of the grammatical mistakes, when we're doing a developmental editing. Now, an editor like I, who does the whole nuts and bolts from start to finish, copy editing, line editing, and proofreading, I don't care if you send it to me with grammatical mistakes or not. But there are some editors out there that would prefer that, you give them the best version you can. And that's always a good idea. But anyway, when it comes to developmental editing, don't be scared of it. This is something that as an indie author, I've learned how to do. I was taught how to do it with my master's degree, and I learned how to do it and kind of cut my teeth on it with my own books, as well as books that I have edited for others. So even if you prefer to edit your own books, I know people say you shouldn't, but hey, it happens. This is a good idea and a good thing for you to follow if you're editing your own books so that you can take a look at what you've got and what you need to fix. So when you prepare for a developmental editing, again, whether you're doing it yourself or you are working with an editor, there are 5 things that you really should think about and look into doing, to prepare yourself both physically and mentally to bring your manuscript to life the best way you possibly can. The first thing to do is to take a break, get some feedback, outline your manuscript, and it's not the kind of outline you think it is. Identify the goals of your developmental editing, and then prepare yourself mentally for the feedback that you're going to get. Let's take a deeper dive into these 5 things because these are very important to making sure your manuscript is ready for publication. Let's start with taking a break from your manuscript. Now, we all know that writing a book takes a lot of time and effort, and sometimes you just have to step away. Yes, this is your baby. Okay, as an author, I understand that all too well. And you want to sit there and you want to tweak and fix and do all that stuff, but you need to step away from your book, at least for a few days. This helps, give you a mental break from your story. And it also allows you to come back to it with a new perspective and fresh eyes. We all have experienced when we write and we go back and we read, we've all experienced our mind inserting words that could be missing. This is a really good reason why you should step back from your books for a day or two, if for no other reason than the story becoming fresh again to you. Plus, if you step away for a couple of days When you come back, you'll be able to see structural issues and inconsistencies more clearly than if you had finished your book and jumped right into the editing either the same day or the next day. Um, it's kind of a mind reset. So take that break, take as long as you need, and then jump back in. Gather feedback. Now, I know a lot of authors like to use beta readers and ARC readers, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to use a beta reader, make sure you give them enough time to read your story. Whether you want to send it to them before you finish the story, send it to them in serial format, each chapter, or send it to them, right before you take that break for a few days. That's entirely up to you. But allowing a beta reader and even writing groups, if you're part of a writing group at the library, they're great for feedback. They can provide you with some valuable insight into what is strong and what is weak in your story. They'll be able to spot things that you didn't notice. They'll be able to give you suggestions that you didn't think of. Use them as that extra set of eyes and that extra set of imagination, because they could help you fix that one rough spot you had a hard time writing. Make sure you choose readers that are familiar with your genre. So if you're writing a sci-fi novel, get someone who also reads sci-fi novels to read your book. If you're a romance author, believe me, there's plenty of romance beta readers out there that would be interested in reading your book. Choose someone that's familiar with the genre. And one thing that I'm going to say is make sure you put a watermark on the manuscript that you send to your beta readers, just to be on the safe side. Once you come back to your story, I want you to outline your manuscript. I know this seems a little odd. Why am I outlining my manuscript after I write it? Well, it helps you break down the components of your story, your plot, your characters, your setting, your themes. It lets you create a roadmap so that you can use this roadmap during your developmental editing or to talk with your editor about as you are going through this process. It allows you to stay focused on the key elements of your story instead of kind of, sidetracking or maybe I should have taken the other fork in the road kind of mindset that we as authors can get into. This outline will help you identify any plot gaps, any character development things that you need to do, and to make sure that your themes are consistent all the way through your story. I know it sounds really odd to create a manuscript outlined this way, but try it. It really does help. I did it with a couple of my novels that I was having trouble with, and it really helped me find some gaps in the plot that I was able to quickly fix and move on. Now, developmental editing is also a good time for you to identify the goals of the editing that you want. Okay, goals. My goals is to write a story. I know that's what you're thinking. What this is that when you release that first edition, that first version of your story, that's basically your brain dump. You've brain dumped everything you want to tell everybody in the story. Then, after you've taken a day or two break, and if you've outlined your story and you have yourself a roadmap, you can sit down and go, okay, what do I want to do here? Do I want to make stronger characters? Do I need to edit my story for better pacing? Do I need to refine the themes of my story? By setting goals for your editing, it keeps you focused, it helps you prevent unnecessary rewrites, and it gives you something to discuss with your editor if you're using an editor for your book. You and your editor will be on the same track so that when your editor starts doing developmental editing for your book, they know as well what you're trying to achieve. They know that you're trying to build your characters and make them stronger. So as they're going through and doing their editing, they will look for places where you can strengthen your character. John Doe needs more detail here. What is he doing? How is he doing it? Why is he doing it? How does he feel like he's doing it? These are the kind of questions your editor can ask you or can put into their feedback if they know the goals that you're trying to accomplish with this developmental editing. Remember, your editor is your friend. I say that because I mean it. Once you've identified your goals and everything, then get prepared for the feedback that you're going to receive, both from your ARC readers and your beta readers, as well as from your editor. The hardest thing to do for anyone is to get feedback, especially if that feedback is extremely critical. You need to keep an open mind, and you need to make sure that you discuss your feedback with your editor professionally. And don't be afraid to stand up for your work. I cannot stress this more. I'll tell you a little story. As an author, I ran into an editor who tried to make me change my story to fit it into a little cookie cutter format. And by changing my story suddenly didn't work. It was about twin sisters, and we needed both sisters to be as prevalent in that story as possible. They were equal. You could say it was two female main characters. This editor wanted us to diminish the role of one of the characters, to diminish one of the roles of the sisters. And by doing that, the story no longer worked. My co-author and I, we stood up for our work because we knew that if we did what she asked, just to fit our book into a little cookie cutter format, it was going to ruin the story. 9 years later, we finally got the book published the way we wanted it because another editor came in and read it and said, "No, you're right. You need both characters here." Make sure that when you're going through the editing process to stand up for your work. As an author and an editor, I will tell you right now, I will always advocate for my authors. I will always support you. And unless it is a major critical plot hole in your story that I think you need to fix, I will never ask you to change your story to fit some sort of cookie cutter format. You have the right as an author to say no. Don't forget that. And hopefully you have an editor who's willing to discuss why you're saying no and really listen to what you as the author are saying. Now, if you're working with an editor, consider making a checklist to review with them when you start going through their feedback. And, before they start going through their feedback even. Because remember, we always want to send our books to our editors in the best possible condition that we possibly can. So here's a few things to think about. Make this checklist for yourself before you send it or before you even embark on your own developmental editing journey. And look for some of these things. Like, is your plot engaging and well-paced? Are there plot holes? Are there inconsistencies? Do your characters have clear motivations and goals? Are their relationships believable? Is your setting immersive? Is your dialogue natural? These are just a few of the things to sit down and look at when you're going through your manuscript and starting developmental editing. As you're working through your manuscript, or even as you're just thinking about questions, and remember, your goals and the roadmap that we talked about earlier, you'll come up with more things to look for as you are editing your manuscript. There are a variety of different things here, especially if you're doing world building or if you're creating cultures like we see so often in sci-fi novels. So keep an open mind, and no question's the wrong question. Put it on your list and double check it as you're going through. Developmental editing is really a rewarding process. And by preparing for it, you're setting some clear goals and you're embracing how you can transform your manuscript into a polished and compelling story. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box. And of course, don't be afraid to talk to your editor or even just a friend to get a second set of eyes on your book and look for some inconsistencies or things you can improve. I'm Beth Freely, author and editor, owner of the Muses Funhouse. I hope this conversation about developmental editing relieves your mind and prepares you to really get your book ready for publication and the best you could possibly be. Hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the book fest.